What is up, everybody? And thank you so much for joining me for another Four Scars Gaming Stadia community interview episode. Today, we've got a super special guest on the show here, but before we get to him, we'll do a shout out here in the chat and see all who's able to make it out here. I see Ian, Chris, Bruce. Bruce, how you doing? Unitrix, Cloud Gaming Dad, Lee, what's up? Thank you. Rock, hey Rock, how's it going? Pecan Fusion, wow, and so many more. Thank you guys so much. So today I'm going to be talking with Michael. He was part of the Play Anywhere Game Jam that was presented by Stadia and Playcrafting in mid March. There were 10 teams, roughly 40 people from around the United States that partook in this game jam. And three of those teams were selected to be part of the Stadia Makers program and get their game published on Stadia. So I reached out to Michael here and asked if he'd like to come on and chat with the community, and he was more than willing to do so. So without further ado, let's talk to him. Hey, Michael, how are you?
My mic was muted. What a great
Oh,
way to start. What's up? How are you?
oh, good, good, good. Thank you again for coming out here and talking and interacting with the community. We really do appreciate it.
Always.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's get off here. Let's find out a little bit about yourself. Can you tell us, some of your favorite hobbies, what games you like to play, how did you get into programming, what studio you are a part of? Tell us
Yeah,
a little bit about yourself.
sure. So my name is Michael Berthaud. I'm a game designer and developer from Boston, Massachusetts. And let's see. I started programming when I was 15, in high school. I just turned 21 like last month.
Wow.
So, uh, like, what's that? 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so I started doing that, and I think I started just kind of just hacking away at things, not really modding, but just kind of beating my head against the computer trying to get pixels on the screen. And that eventually turned into like after just like not really getting tired of trying to like write my own render and stuff, kind of getting into Unity. And then eventually I just started doing a lot of game jams. Like I just started doing a ton of game jams and just kind of beating my head of just trying to improve on the craft. And then one day I went to this expo in New York. Uh, it was Game Devs of Color, and I met a composer uh, that actually worked on Fragments, but he worked at JumpButton Studio.
Mm-hmm.
And then he seen one of the games I was working on. Like I brought my game. I was like a crazy kid. I was like 18. I just had like I had like a Surface Book, and I would like run around like, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. And then I don't know. I guess he seen it, and then he was like, "Yeah, this kid is pretty crazy." And then
Yeah.
yeah, I work with JumpButton ever since then.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So,
Yeah.
when in your spare time, what type of games, or what are some of your favorite games, or maybe what did you grow up playing?
Uh, I don't play that many AAA games anymore, but when I grew up playing a lot of JRPGs.
Hmm.
I think the first game I ever played was Mega Man X6, but the first
Hmm.
game that I ever beat might have been Final Fantasy 6 was the first game I ever
Six.
beat. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome.
I played all of since then I played all of them, but my favorite
Hmm.
genre is probably JRPGs.
That's great. Awesome. Okay. So, how long have you been with Jump Button? And, can you tell us a little bit about what your role is with the studio?
So I started with Jumbo when I was 18, so 18, 19, 20, 21, 4 years now, or
Yep.
three, because I just turned 21.
Hmm.
So I'm a programmer and designer. That's usually the role that I'm in. Since we're small, you typically have to wear multiple hats.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's the role that I am on Fragments. We had another designer. His name is Jonathan Umar,
Hmm.
or yeah, Jonathan. And basically, yeah, that's what we do. And so he
That's
designed a lot of the levels and ironed out the concepts, and he did a great job, and I programmed it, and yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So who else is on the team? We know it's yourself, Jonathan.
uh Calbert Warner, he's a composer,
Hmm.
and Jovi, who was he's a concept artist, but he also did a lot of the some of the in-game artwork also.
Oh, okay. Wow, great. So can you tell us how the opportunity came about to be part of the Play Anywhere Game Jam?
Honestly, because Cal, we call him Cal, but
Hmm.
Calbert, he is I don't know, he's like a mogul. Like, to be honest with you, I
Hmm.
was just doing my thing. I
Hmm.
don't know what I was doing. I might have just been like making something or
Hmm.
yeah. And then one day Cal just DM'd me and was like, "Hey, dude, I got an opportunity for this game jam," because Cal is from New York. He's New York based. I'm from Boston, so I probably would have
Hmm.
never heard about this if it wasn't for Cal.
Right.
And then Cal was like, "Dude, got this opportunity for a game jam. You want to do it?" And I was like, "We do games all the time. We're like addicted to it." And so we're like, I was like, "Fine, why not?" And then that's how that kind of happened.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So as
Yeah.
you told us earlier, this isn't your first game jam. You've been part of many, many different game jams. Um,
Hmm.
so prior to this, participating in this Play Anywhere game jam, had you heard of Google Stadia before?
Yeah, I did. I heard about it like at the height of like their release or like initial launch,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when it was that well, and that's when I heard about it, and I hadn't played it because I never did the beta or whatever little intro that they had, so
Mm-hmm.
I never had used it, but I remember people like praising it because apparently like it ran Cyberpunk good when it was struggling. Like it was one of those
Yeah.
only platforms.
Yep.
And so
Yeah.
that's when I was like starting to like look into it a little bit more of like, wait, like why is that the case?
Mm-hmm.
But I had never actually used it myself
Okay.
until like a week before the game jam.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, this is pretty dope.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. Okay, so can you tell us how did your team? Was there any preparation that your team had to go through? You know, before you started the game jam, is there like a certain ritual? Like, did you already know, what the parameters were for the game jam, so you were able to maybe start feeling out a little bit of what you might do, or tell
Oh,
us a little bit about that.
most of it is a complete freestyle, to be honest. But
Mm-hmm.
we knew that it had to be co-op. So that's it. But we
Mm-hmm.
like because like Google didn't really give a theme or anything like that. Because most game jams you get a theme, which is a little bit easier to maneuver what you're about to make because you're kind of restricted to the theme. But
Yeah.
we were restricted by pure mechanics, so we were just like, okay, nothing. I forgot I had one, but I had like a big web of
Mm-hmm.
stuff because like one I remember just like having like a sketchbook, like a digital sketchbook, and sharing my screen, just be like, okay, what about this? No, this is trash. Bad idea. Bad idea. Bad idea. And so we did that. Uh,
Yeah.
Aside from that, there was no like technical preparation.
Oh, wow. Okay. So now let's fast forward. The game jam started. Take us through like what from the moment they say go, tell us about that experience. Like what does your team go through? I mean, I know it's probably harder since you weren't together in one room, so everyone is spread apart. So,
Mhm.
kind of explain to everybody here, what that week was like. What every day might have been like, or hour to hour. How did you plan, or what type of communication?
Hmm. I actually never even thought about that experience during a game jam. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
hectic. Well, actually, no, it's not hectic. The beginning is not hectic. The beginning is fun. But the beginning
Oh,
is the
okay.
funnest part because you have the
Okay.
biggest aspirations of what the game is gonna be, right? And so you're at probably like cloud nine at the start of the game jam, and so at the start, since like by the time like the the engine started and we knew what we were gonna do, we're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I got to do this, this, this. So Jonathan, he got on to do the levels, right? Because we had the design outlined, we knew exactly what the game was gonna be. We had our design pillars, we knew the experience. Okay, go. Nothing to talk about anymore. At this point, like I was like, we don't need to talk to each other. Goodbye. Let's just do our work. And so then I get to programming and like At first, like honestly, at first, like it took me a long time to actually get into the mechanics because like I was writing like doing the 2D physics manually, and
Mm-hmm.
that was like pretty annoying to jumpstart. But then like eventually most of the times in game jam, that's like the first 2 or 3 days, it's like, oh shit, this took longer than I thought. And now we have to like course correct. And so like that is when like the aspiration of what the dream was gonna be starts to come down. You're like shit, like this took me 3 days. I didn't even realize. And
Right.
so like there's that, and like for me, like I don't know if like the ventilation in our room is messed up, but then like my computer never turns off. So then like the heat from outside and the heat from my computer like
Computer.
combined, and then like
Yep.
I'm dying. And so then you get that, and then like just curbing your not even your frustration, but like you just gotta like curbing like your attitude towards like when you run into a problem, because like during a regular production when you run into a problem, assuming that you're not nearing a deadline, like it's
Hmm.
fine, you just kind of look it up or like just
Right.
fight through it. But like during the game jam you're like, okay, why isn't this working, why isn't this working? So then like there's that. But
Hmm.
honestly, we were kind of like cruising. I think that was the first game jam. We were talking about this after. That was the first game jam. Like we weren't stressed because most of them are like 2 days. We had a week.
Right.
So
Oh,
like
okay.
yeah. So we like in the middle of the game jam, it was like smooth sailing, like doing
Hmm.
the levels good. And then like the end was like the worst part. At least for me, it was the worst part. Like I
Hmm.
remember like there was a bug in like getting to the game end screen. Like I don't know, there was like some bug like that. The camera was not how like we thought it should have been, and so it's always that
Right.
last 20% of the shit that
Hmm.
you're like, oh yeah, that part is easy, and then like you
Right.
have to do it at the end, and you're like, oh, this is terrible. So like that's usually how the game jam goes, and you're just
Okay.
like, why did like, and every time you always say like, oh, we definitely overshot. Like this is way out of scope for us, but
Yeah.
that's usually how it goes.
Okay, so you touched upon, you did come across some stumbling blocks there, but when push
Yeah,
comes to shove, you got everything together. Now, was
yeah.
there a requirement like for a finished product? Was there any like a certain requirement that it needed to be like a 5 minute demo, or you know what I mean? Like, were there any parameters as far as like the length? We knew it had to be like a couch co-op multiplayer, but were there any other
Yeah.
parameters that you needed to adhere to?
No, and that's probably made it worse for us because we're a bunch of ambitious maniacs. Because
Mm-hmm.
we, there was nothing like that. It was just like, go make a couch co-op game. Like whether your game is like arena based, or is like a series of levels, or if it's supposed to be like one long cohesive experience, there was no real requirement to that. And because of
Okay.
that, it was just like, okay, well, we know all the bullet points we want to hit,
Mm-hmm.
so however long the level has to be till we exhaust all the features we want to hit and show to the player, so be it.
Right. Okay.
So that's
Oh,
what we did.
yeah, that makes sense. That's cool. Okay. So how long have you been using Unity, and what do you think about it? Is it flexible, or how do you find it compared to other softwares you've used?
Uh, let's see. I started using Unity when I was like 17.
Okay.
So like for my first 2 years, I was like doing everything manually. It
Hmm.
is flexible. To be fair, it is flexible. And yeah, I think like the only thing, like you run into this when you use anyone else's software. At the end of the day, it's like whenever you run like you want something really specific, you might have to jump through a little bit more hoops because at the end of the day, like it's not your code base. So you
Hmm.
always run into that problems. But like I would be lying if I said it doesn't definitely make it easy to put things on the screen compared to writing it like manually. Like it definitely does. So to that regard, it's good. Like I definitely recommend it to like people that are just starting out and stuff.
Okay. That's good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So that brings me to my next question here. As we touched upon earlier, Fragments was one of the three games chosen to be picked up and
Yep.
published on Stadia and to be part of the Stadia Makers program.
Right.
So have has Google reached out to you since then? And like what does being part of the Stadia Makers program, what does that mean to Jump Button Studio? Like, how does that affect your development?
Oh, support, development support.
Hmm.
Whether it's like some yeah, development support, like all the things that entail or make production difficult, whether it's like, outsourcing or like even like getting it onto their platform, whatever like specific platform support you may need, like you get those
Hmm.
kind of things that can be
Okay.
archaic if you don't really have support from the direct platform holder.
Okay. So since the game jam has there been any further development on Fragments, or how is that coming along? I know.
By
So
us,
what's that?
by us, no.
Yes. No.
No, we
No.
took a little bit of a break. Not because, but not not I guess I don't know if the word is physical. Like we didn't do any like hard labor on it, but like we like looking back on the design, like have
Hmm.
been thinking about it. So if that constitutes as work, then yes. But
Yeah.
nothing like programmatically or adding assets. We haven't been doing that. We kind of just
No.
took a step back and think, okay, like from an idea standpoint, experience standpoint, this definitely works, and this is exactly how we imagined it to be. So
Hmm.
now let's take a step back, go back into pre-production, and figure out now, how can we execute on this flawlessly and, with
Okay.
more precision?
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So then, is there any type of a time frame that you're shooting on for to release? Or is it kind of just open up in the air now? Or I don't know if there's any requirements that they said, oh, being part of the Stadia Makers program, it has to release by a certain date, or
Well, we're hoping to release, well, just because, like, depending on just like time and like how much money it costs just for us to make it, like, we're
Mhm.
hoping to like not take forever, like, surely not 8 years or something like that. But
Right.
you know, hopefully in like a year or two.
Oh, okay. That's good. That's great. Okay. Um, and I know briefly talked to you before we went on the air. I had question from one of the community members that wasn't able to make it out today, and his
Yeah.
question was to you that he has a young son, and he likes coding on Scratch and Python. He he
Okay.
he dreams of making video games as well. Is there any advice that you might give to potentially a young person that's looking up to you? I mean, you yourself, you started very early.
Yeah.
So, is there any type of advice that you would suggest? Is there any schooling, or there's any, do you get into it and try and figure it out yourself, or?
This is something I take very seriously because I feel
Hmm.
like, um, you know, just like it can be like the culture of like programming and making games can be very gatekeepy, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. So like to that, his son, I would say like, I mean, obviously you can recommend like getting into Unity or whatever framework or stuff like that, but I don't
Hmm.
know if necessarily the right suggestion because I feel like the most important thing, like when you're starting is like the frame of mind that you're in, right? Like I would argue that the most important thing is to like one, so like when he's in school and things like that, like have an idea of the things that he wants to make and really like, try to always find like how what you're learning is applicable to the things that you can create. Just so that when you're going to school and doing those things that you don't feel like you're learning it for no reason. This is why people don't remember stuff because they don't see the applicability in what they're learning.
Right.
So that's the first
Right.
thing I would tell somebody.
Okay.
And then secondly, I would probably say that keep pushing yourself and get used to being uncomfortable. Like, if he wants to improve or maybe his dad can help him with that, just like, maybe like I've never used Scratch or Python, but whatever like framework Scratch is like, maybe the next level that like, removes some of the uh gives the programmer more free will and go
Mhm.
incrementally like that, just because the biggest thing, especially when you're learning, is your problem solving skills, right?
Right.
And being able to like overcome obstacles like when you're doing new and unique things. So like
Mhm.
I would just say to, yeah, keep don't get stuck in the same comfortability, right?
Right.
That's poisonous to your growth, especially as an artist. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Wow. That's great. Awesome. Okay. So another question here that just as we're talking, and conversations flowing, is
Hmm.
that I'm just curious. Have you come up with any hurdles that you've had to overcome? Being a young programmer out there, has there any hurdles that you saw that you've had to like push past through? Because maybe that there's always a certain people are looking for a certain type of person, or You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, is there
I know
any of
exactly what
those
you mean.
type of, yeah.
Well, okay. Well, the first thing I'll say was like, yes, I have ran through some external hurdles, but the
Hmm.
tallest hurdles were the self hurdles. So like
Okay.
externally, like I remember like, and this goes back to like the guy's son, right? Like I remember like, dude, I was literally like when I first got something on the screen that
Hmm.
could like when I could like get like I think it was like turning the cube red or something. Or like
Right.
and I had like a UI of HP and I was so
Hmm.
happy about that that
Right.
like at that time Rockstar had like a studio in like some suburb way out from the city. And I literally zipped up an executable and sent it to them and was like,
Hmm.
dude, like, oh, like we should do like, can I join? Like, this is pretty awesome. And like,
Right.
who's gonna open up a random ass zip from someone that they
Right.
don't know? But
Right.
like it was those kind of hurdles when I realized like, oh, like maybe I'm naive and like kind of young. So that was like the first thing that kind
Hmm.
of initially in my career made me more reserved and probably just cooled my like big head.
Hmm.
But most of the hurdles, like on a serious note, was probably just my perception, right? Because the Boston game scene is pretty lively. Like I'm pretty
Hmm.
sure it's one of the best in the out of all the ones that have a prominent one. And
Hmm.
like I think just when I remember like just first walking in or going into meetups and just feeling like holy crap, like everyone here knows a lot and
Hmm.
like, oh, I played that person's game before. And like just that feeling of like, oh, like, can I do this? And like, when you look up things about like, oh,
Yeah.
well, if you look up how to make a game, you might
Hmm.
see a list of things. Modeling, 2D art, learn Photoshop, programming, all these things. And then when
Right.
you have that in your head and you go to a meetup, you're like, oh crap, like can I even learn all these things? And like, where do I stand in here? And like
Right.
those are kind of magnified when you're young because like I mean me personally, I'd had that feeling like like a little bro kind of like feeling like, oh, like you'll figure it out, like get out of
Yeah.
here.
Oh,
That was just my perception. They're not like that. They're so nice, but I think
right.
just realizing that nobody cares how old you are as long as you get the work done. And then when I started to
That's
realize
awesome.
that, like it was a lot easier for me to traverse the scene.
Wow. That's awesome. That's great to hear. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So let's see if there's anyone in the chat here. If we have any questions for Michael, we'll just give him a few minutes here to see if we have. So, is there anything else that you would, anyone else watching that you'd like them to know or talk about?
Um, I suppose not in particular.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this time most of the games I've worked on, whether it was like a commission
Mm-hmm.
or like working at a startup or something, I could never really talk about the product because it really like in legally and even
Mm-hmm.
logistically it wasn't my own to really be chatting about.
Mm-hmm.
So this time I have a little bit more autonomy over what's going on. And
Mm-hmm.
so because of that, I recently started a YouTube, just not necessarily doing devlogs, but
Mm-hmm.
talking about doing my thing and making and dealing with the trials and tribulations and also greatness in making a game and going through the production and the whole thing. Because I don't really want to do tutorials and stuff like that. I feel like there's a gap in that everyone does tutorials and stuff like that, like
Mm-hmm.
on stride to hope to be an indie game developer or whatever it is. But then
Yep.
let's say you do reach that, the mental hurdles you have to go over is like I would argue a lot harder than to figure out how to rotate a cube. And so it's for that I recently started YouTube. And so like if anybody knows or like is interested in that or like uh or any youthful person that maybe wants to do games and
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really know or has the burden of school like I do because it's a burden,
Mm-hmm.
uh, then yeah, check me out. You can just look up on YouTube my first last name.
Okay, well, I'll add a link to your YouTube to the description of this video after. That way,
Mm.
everyone will be easy to find you, subscribe, and I think that'll be a great resource, especially for for people that are just even curious as to what it's like to be a
Yeah,
programmer and having someone that they can see, whether they be young or not, that they can relate to, and I think that's fantastic. So I had a question showed up in the chat here asking if you could tell us some of the highlights you had from the Play Anywhere Game Jam. Was there anything like most memorable or?
I feel like the most memorable thing, and I don't know if this. I think this is the first game ever where like when I had designed and thought of a concept in my
Mhm.
head, it came out to other players and to humans just as I had imagined. Like I think that is something that is like in the same way when like you're in awe of like a painter with
Mhm.
that goes from a white canvas to a colorful one. Like that's how I felt, and I was like
Wow.
usually in a week, like or even in a production, it's like it's never how you want it to be. And
Mhm.
although the game wasn't perfect, there's a lot that like I would like to change. I would say that that was the first time I was like, wow, like that is exactly how I imagine people playing it, and that is exactly how like I seen it in my head, and that was a little bit addicting, or like a little scared of that feeling, but it was really cool. That's the highlight.
Wow, that's awesome. Here's another question here. Let's see. It says you mentioned that you don't play triple A games anymore. Is there any particular reason for that, or just they don't appeal
So
to you, or?
I used to be, well, I am like
Yep.
a huge gamer. Like I play all sorts of them. Like
Hmm.
my collection is like it's well, I digress. It comes down to the point where like for me, like when I started to make them seriously and treat them as an art form,
Hmm.
after you know, I've been playing games since I was 0. So like after playing so many, I just really started to feel like the AAA scene was did not is not or does not try to push the medium artistically in what in any way, shape, or form. Like they push it
Right.
graphically, obviously, because they have the
Hmm.
manpower to do so. But I just
Yep.
feel like they don't really push the medium forward. And as such, I feel like it's just not inspiring to play those games. Like I feel like for me, the only thing I got from it is like, okay, this is how like I look at AAA like, okay, this is a great way to figure out how to organize a bunch of people to make something. Like they
Right.
definitely have that down for sure.
Hmm.
And but I just don't see in most AAA games any like desire to push the medium, and that makes sense because like the budget is huge. Like they don't like that involves taking risks trying to push the medium, and I doubt they
Right.
want to risk millions of dollars. So I don't blame them for that, but it's
Hmm.
for that reason that I just don't get that much joy from playing it, and also for the fact that you know because I'm of the position of wanting to push the medium forward, I
Hmm.
find that oftentimes when you play a lot of AAA games, especially like with young designers, like I'm
Hmm.
not saying that like I'm not young, but I see this in my
Right.
peers,
Right.
like they play so many AAA games. And then when it's time to make your own game, what happens is you start to inherently copy the ideas from them. And
Yeah.
like it goes very simple, like, okay, where should your UI go? And it's like, oh, I put it there. Well, why? And even if that's a good place, the fact
Hmm.
is, like, when you start to copy it, your game becomes a foreign entity to you. Because remember that, like,
Right.
when the AAA people put add those things to their game because they have certain experience goals that they're trying to hit,
Hmm.
but and them choosing to do something a certain way is not like a wheel like solution. It's not like a one all be all. Like it comes with trade offs. But I think the perception is because these games sell so much that this must be the way to do it. And I
Right.
think it really under develops your problem solving skills. So a lot of time I don't really like to play AAA games because I'm like, okay, I know what I want to do and I
Yep.
have a clear goal of the problem I'm trying to solve. So I don't really need to look at someone else's game to figure out how to do this. I'm gonna find my own solution. And if it mimics someone else's, so be it. But
Yeah.
I'm not really interested in copy and pasting. So I don't play them.
Wow. That's awesome. It makes sense. I mean, when you're obviously when you're developing your game yourself or indie developer, it's that creativity and the originality like you were touching upon there. It just seems like you'll find more indie games willing to be different than the norm, not a cookie cutter, push the envelope, do something different,
Sure.
not be afraid to try. And that's awesome to hear that from you as well. I think a lot of
Sure.
people feel that way as well. As AAA games they're good, but they're not the
They're
end
good.
all be all, right? Just like you said, I've had many experience indie games that are far better than any other AAA game that I've ever played. Just
Yeah.
for the story, the creativity, the uniqueness itself. And I think a lot more people are starting to realize that and open their eyes to, if a game's labeled as indie, it doesn't mean that it's like freeware or shareware or a lower experience. It can offer as good as or even better than those top AAA games.
Yeah,
So wow,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, that's amazing, amazing. So I had another comment here in the chat uh, saying thank you for your wisdom, outlook, and the courage to go out and do something. And they're wishing much success to you.
Oh, that's sweet. Thanks, man. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah,
Really, really.
that is awesome. So let me see here. Do we have any other questions here for Michael before we head out? We'll give him another minute or two to see if we have any more questions. Just want to again thank you for taking your time out of your busy day to chat with us here in the community. We really do appreciate that interaction and being able to, not only do we see a face, but we get to talk to you live, ask those questions. We get to see the real you and what you feel and think. And it's awesome. It's very eye opening and it's something, that we can relate to and just, draws us in even more. Like I said, I know a lot of people have sent me messages on Discord or Twitter or talking about fragments and indie development and things like that. And I think, yeah, people are awesome. The Stadia community is hungry for unique and different type games, and I think it's something that they appreciate. Although there is many AAA games on Stadia, there's also that much more like these indie games. And just after talking with you today, we can see that creativity and pushing the envelope, and those are the games that draw to me that are going to draw a lot of different players in and to experience that without, being different than the norm. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's just a mirror of overcoming the fear of failure.
Hmm.
I think that's what takes a lot of practice.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
also to your point of busy day, uh,
Hmm.
I'm not sure. Thank you for saying that. I had
Yeah.
class today,
Okay.
so and I'm thinking like of you saying busy day, and I'm like, I don't even know if I would call it busy day. My whole day is gone because I went to class. So I was just, I don't.
Well, that's part of it, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's someone else in the chat here saying, Squid saying the game looks amazing. He's impressed with the team synergy, and oh, okay. I guess Squid was asking. He might not have been here earlier. Your favorite game franchise? Now I know that you mentioned like you like JRPGs. Is there one particular? Would you say Final Fantasy is your favorite franchise, or is there
Yikes.
another franchise?
Okay, this is tough. Well, honestly, I'm gonna stay loyal. I think my favorite franchise is Final Fantasy,
Hmm.
but my
Yep.
favorite game ever is
Hmm.
Xenogears. It's a
Oh, okay.
PS1 classic.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That is my favorite game ever.
Okay. So Final Fantasy. Now that you're talking about Final Fantasy, I'm a Final
Mhm.
Fantasy fan as well. What would you say is your top or your favorite Final Fantasy game out of them all?
Damn. Not seven, that's for sure.
Okay.
Um,
Yep.
I think it's wow. I would say my favorite out of them all would
Mm-hmm.
either be six is my top, and six or I might have to do six, seven, 10, and then the rest, or
Okay.
maybe uh, 7 and 10 fight. But I'm gonna go 6, 7, 10, and then like after 10 might be 9,
Mm-hmm.
and then 8, and then 4.
Okay. So
Mm,
so when you say four, let's see, because before they switched the naming over, I'm trying to think. My personal favorite in the Final Fantasy series was released as Final Fantasy 2 on the Super Nintendo. I forget. I don't know if that's
I think that's 3.
is that
I think
3?
I think that might be 3. Let me check.
Okay.
That's a
Okay.
good
Yeah.
question.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So personally, that's what I like. And 7 was a highlight for me. Um, I enjoyed that when it first, came over to PlayStation. That was the big transition into 3D. But I guess I'm a little old
Oh no,
school.
FF2 is 4.
Four, okay, so
FF2
four,
on the
yeah,
Switch was 4. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I love that. That
So
was
good.
a big fan of the sprite base. I guess I'm old school. I'm 43, turning 44. So in my teenage years were filled, with the Sega Master System, NES, Super Nintendo, and things like that. Sega Genesis, Fantasy Stars, another one of my favorite JRPG series as well. So
Mm-hmm.
that's nice to know. It's nice to hear, a variety of different genres and games in the series. Let's see. We
Yeah.
have another question here. Let me see. Oh, okay. So Robert has a question for you. Why did you want to get into game development, and what spurred you in at such a young age?
Oh, well, in my family, you're like I was gonna be an engineer or something like abstract. They said like just be an engineer. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure they meant it just for like my in fear of like my financial security or something, and just trying to get
Mm-hmm.
something that was stable. And so for a long time, I thought I was gonna do some engineering or something, but I'd always played games. Like I was saying, like my older brothers would play a lot of games, and I guess I just kind of like played what they played.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I think one day in high school, like I don't know. Like I think I got the urge. Well, I do have visual art skills, not nearly for production, or like not nearly enough. Not even for it wasn't a mere matter of production. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
enough for me to express my ideas from my head into reality cohesively enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I just never worked on it. And then but like when I started to like yeah, when I was like 16, I just really started to get the urge to like want to express myself or do something, right? Like, how
Mm-hmm.
can I started to get kind of envious of like other kinds of artists from all sorts of mediums. Just the
Right.
fact that, man, like I'm so jealous of them that they can like, put whatever ideas onto a canvas, onto like a vinyl or whatever it may be. And so just was like finding ways of the skill set that I already had to do
Mm-hmm.
that. And I'd always had been, you know, technically inclined. And so that's kind of when I start to harness my programming when I start to gear towards games. And that's how
Wow.
that happened. So it spurred from just like as I got older, like my urge, my yearn for self-expression heightened.
Okay. Okay. We've got another question here. Project Storm wants to know, do you prefer to play or create shorter or longer games, or somewhere in between? It's a hot topic in the gaming community today. What are your preferences?
I have no preference. The answer to that question, and I'm I'm not one to say a right answer, but I think the problem with that idea is
Hmm.
that implies that when you start the game, you're already saying this is going to be long and this is going to be short. When, however, which I think what we need to be doing as creators is say, okay, now you see, oftentimes I think that thought process comes from the fact that like oftentimes when we're talking about games, we're talking about mechanics, right? Like what new
Hmm.
mechanic do you have? Blah 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 blah.
Right.
And like, yes, that is a good way to think about it, but at the same time, like the way I tend to think about it is not necessarily mechanics, but like, okay, like what kind of mental playground am I about to create for the player? And when I exhaust all the things that you can do this mental playground, I'm done. Like that, the game is done. Like there is no such thing as that has to hit that many hours. Like if I feel like I have nothing new to express the player or nothing new to show him, it's like, hey, like there's you can do this in this playground and there's this, or did you ever think about this? Like once I've exhausted my own mental exploration in the playground, I have nothing more to communicate to the player, so I'm done. So I never go into it thinking, well, it has to be this many hours, this many hours.
Right.
However, I know, okay, this is what I want to show the player, and this is what, this is like, where I want to take them into the playground. And then when I
Right.
think it's done, it's done.
Well, that's awesome. It like you said there, you don't set out to say, okay, this is going to be a 10, 20, 30, 40 hour game. It's once you've told your story, it's fun. And that's great. That's awesome to hear. Cause I know like you'll hear some of the people, gamers that'll be like, oh, well, this game, I don't get my money's worth. It's only, 10 hours of gameplay and it costs me $60, so they're all complaining on it. And the way that I look at it is, you go out to the movies there, you pay, what,
Exactly.
right? For an hour or two of gameplay. So if I get 10 hours of gameplay out of a $60 game, that's $6 an hour, right? Not counting if you're going to go back and play it again, or if there's multiplayer components or whatever. And you know, you being a developer, I'm sure you can relate to this. Your time, your creativity is worth just as much as anybody else's. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're giving me a really good 2 to 3 hour experience, I would take that in a heartbeat over a long drawn out 10, 20, 30 hour game.
Yeah, I think it's a cultural thing. I think it's
Mhm.
because games are such a new medium, like they've grown so fast that we sometimes don't treat it as so, but like
Right.
it's a baby medium compared to like literary mediums or visual mediums or even movies. I think movies are like 300 years. And
Right.
so like I think it's just a matter of like, I think the industry, like the consumer outlook right on it versus like how AAA really industrializes the process.
Mhm.
That's why we feel like we need to min max it, right? Because like AAA industrializes the process. So now as a consumer, I'm min maxing it. Like, what the heck? Like, okay, well, yeah, I'm gonna say like I'm gonna cut out my hours or how much it costs per dollar or whatever. And I think that's just because like I don't think we I think the people that accept it as an art form is not as much as we think. And I think the consumers are really I think that's just because of the mindset. I think once people kind of accept it more as an art form, I mean if the game is bad, it's bad. But even
Yeah.
like let's say the good games that like maybe cost $60 or whatever, um, I don't know if we should price 2 hours at $60 or not, but I think
Right.
just it's the matter of respecting the fact that if I do pay that, that's because, you know, this is my art and I think it's worth this much.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that.
So now that comes to a question I just thought in my mind. And I'm not sure you're involved in this or you have any input or whatever. So when let's say you're finished, your team's done with Fragments, you're getting ready to release it. How does what is the process? Like I said, if you know or you don't, that's fine. The process of going about determining how much that you will sell it for, or what the game's going to retail for. Are you familiar with that process?
Uh, no, but
No.
that the most, I would imagine that, like, I mean, in a perfect world, I give it for free. But
Right.
I would imagine that, like, it's a point of trying to figure out, like, well, how much did we spend on this? And, like, what, I mean, like, even if you blow the budget, you can't say, well, we blew the budget, so we have to charge $100 a copy. Like that, but like I would imagine that has something to do with like the budget or how much you're willing to spend on it and like,
Hmm.
doing that kind of price point. But I don't really know. I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's fair. Just something I thought of as we were talking here. So,
Yeah.
all
Mm.
right. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap things up
That
here.
was fun.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much. Maybe down the road we can get you to come back on here.
Oh, for
Maybe
sure.
closer to release for Fragments, or if you're working on another project, and we'll keep in touch. And definitely, this is awesome because, like
Wait,
I
can I
said,
say one last thing? Is
sure,
that possible? I
yeah.
just want to say, like, because you're just talking about releasing another thing. Like, uh, this is like such a good I don't know, like I remember I don't really I don't like, traverse the Stadia Reddit or anything like that, but I know
Mhm.
like a lot of times when new platforms come out, like the thought, I don't know if like yeah, the thought is like, "Oh, we want AAA or like, big budget titles and la la la." But like,
Mhm.
this is also something like, just like how like back in a time when like to access music you needed like a music player, but now we have Apple Music and Spotify and all these things. Like
Mhm.
that's really how I see like the cloud game platform. So like
Yeah.
while it can be annoying sometime of like, like oh my god, I don't want another indie game. And like I guess I can sympathize with that because you want like, some big budget productions
Mhm.
to play. But like understand that like this is like an awesome thing just because like now like because that hardware barrier is gone, there's so many more people that can access like
Mhm.
these games that never would be able to. including indies, right? Because like indies, if anyone needs that, like the idea of cloud gaming more, it would be indies, because now you have more people that could play the game that never could be.
Hmm.
So I guess really what I'm trying to say is like thank you for the people that support Stadia and keep it alive and stuff.
So
That's a big
that's
part.
great to hear. That is so awesome because a lot of people in mainstream media and press, they like to just report on the negative things and spin
Yeah.
things bad when in reality it's not the case. So hearing that coming from you, knowing that it's 100% real and straight from your heart, is just awesome to hear that. And I think the Stadia community as a whole responds to that, with open arms, and you know, we like the indie games. Like you said, the AAA games are fine, but the indie games, you've got to have that nice mix of games, because you get that creativity, you get that ingenuity, the uniqueness, and I don't think that without indie games, gaming wouldn't be what it is today.
Oh, there's no way it would be.
Yeah, no, no, yeah, and also another point you touched on with cloud gaming, it breaks down those barriers, because you could play it on tablet, your computer doesn't have to be super high spec, your phone, TV, whatever, the devices you own. So now your audiences went from a finite niche hardcore, you have to buy this
Yeah.
$400 or $500 piece of hardware, to now you get millions and hundreds of millions of potential customers there that can experience that game. And for myself, I would think that as a developer, not having to worry about the end user hardware requirement, or having a fixed, if you're developing on a platform on Stadia, that these are the hardware specs that you're under, and you don't have to worry about, well, are some people going to have you know 4 gigs of RAM, or are they going to have a faster CPU, or a slower video card? You've got a finite set of specs here, and you're knowing that regardless on what device that they play it, that they're all going to have the same experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And furthermore, like, there's a point where like, when I would make a lot of mobile apps and stuff, like there is a lot of joy in being able to say like, "Hey, I know you have a phone, go download this game." Or like,
Mm-hmm.
when I would mobile apps, and like while like, the developer that like, the new developer, because like, they want to make the big budget games, that might be what inspires them. You immediately think like, okay, like I want to do like put my shit on the PS4, PS5, the Xbox and all that stuff. But then for me, it's like that's cool, but like I'm not so naive to think that everyone can even get these. Like this is my like, this is
Yep.
my life. So of course I have it, but not everyone is willing to spend $500 on a machine that they
Right.
might not be able can get.
Right.
They might not be able to get. And so
Yep.
like I think that is the best part, is being able to say like, hey, like, dude, I know you have internet because I know you watch Netflix. So like, bro, play this.
Exactly. That's so awesome to hear, and it's good, again, to hear that your open mindedness, your willingness to explore these new ideas and new technologies. It's
Sure.
fantastic, and I think that all just comes back to reflects on your personality and who you are, and I mean, you've shown us to here. You've given us, you're not putting on some show. You're not trying to sell us anything. You're being real. This is you. This is Michael, right?
Yeah.
This is what you think, and you're not worried about who says what or what says what. This is awesome. And again, I really do appreciate it. I'm seeing a lot of comments here in the chat. Thank you. Someone said, I'm here to say, let's see, hold on, that they were thinking about buying Fragments, but now they'll buy it day one when it comes out. Just after getting to know you and who you
Bro,
and
I
who you
appreciate it so much.
are. Yeah. So this is awesome. So definitely, we'll circle back around, maybe another 6 months, 8 months or so. We'll see where you at. Maybe we'll have a little bit more to talk about. You can tell us about Fragments. We'll keep in touch, and this is awesome. Thank you again so much. I really do appreciate it.
Keep in touch, everybody. I'll be
Okay.
here. I'm not gonna disappear. Don't worry. There's no crazy ass NDA where I can't talk about what I'm making. So I'm like, you'll hear from me
Awesome. And we'll get the link to your YouTube, add it to the description so everyone can check it out and subscribe.
for sure. I would
Awesome.
appreciate that a
Yep.
lot.
Thanks so much. And thank you, everybody, for coming out here in the chat. And we'll see you all again later. Take care, everybody.
Take care.